Oh, greetings. Michael Didier here. Thank you so much for joining me. We are crossing the Red Sea today. Last week, we came out of Egypt. You know, Yasher had some things about us coming out of Egypt that Torah didn't have. We kind of left off here, the end of 13 last week in Torah, and it says, so they took the journey from Sukkot to Etham. And it says that he did not take away the pillar of cloud. So I think the pillar of cloud was leading them, at least from Etham on. I don't know if it led them from Goshen, where they were starting, or was it Goshen? Sukkot. Here's the trail that we went from Goshen and Ramses to Sukkot, and then to Etham, and then we dropped down to Nueva. And they have some other names that Nueva is not. I don't think it's really a Torah word, nor is it in Yasher, but I think it's kind of what it's called right now is Nueva. Or Nueva, probably is more appropriate since it's a soft V. So, last week, after we did Torah, we spent a little bit of time on Yasher, and we're going to do the same thing today. We're going to do a little bit of Torah, and then a chapter of Torah, and a little bit more of Yasher. On Yasher last week, we saw that after we left Etham, that there were a bunch of, here it is, and all the nobles of Pharaoh rose up in the morning, and with them about 700,000 men. We had 700,000 men come against us, and we repelled them. They came to us in Pi-Hahirot, which is Nueva. We're going to see that today. We were eating and drinking, and they came to us and said, what are you doing? You said you were going to go 3 days. It's been 5 days. And we just said, Yehovah told us not to go back. And so they started to fight with us. We fought with them, and they lost. They went back home. I don't remember if it said how many men died. It says they gave them a severe beating. And the battle was sore upon the Egyptians, and all the Egyptians fled before Israel's seed, for many of them perished by the hand of Israel. So now they're going to be reporting back to Pharaoh. It says, well, we're going to see this today. And the nobles of Pharaoh went to Egypt and told Pharaoh, saying, Israel's seed have fled. They're not coming back. So we're going to do 14 today. And we're going to come back to this, 18, through a few more verses, and then we'll call it good for the day. Let's go to 14. Here it says, and Yehovah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to Israel's seed, that they turn and camp before here it is, Pi-Hahirot, between Migdal and the sea, opposite Ben Safan. You shall camp before it by the sea. So I picture the pillar of fire and smoke leading them down to Pi-Hahirot. I did some research on Pi-Hahirot, and it actually explained the other two words, Migdal and Beth Zaphon. Here it is. The memorial spot where Yehovah places, this is actually written by one Poor Man's Concordance. Let's finish the word, A-N-C-E, Poor Man's Concordance by Robert Hawker. I don't use it much, but I couldn't find anything on Pi-Hahirot, and he's the only one that had something. And I thought, oh, this is actually pretty good. It says, the memorial spot where Jehovah displayed his grace to Israel. The word is a compound of P, mouth, karat, which a Norman, I don't know what that is, or opening. And it was the opening to the Red Sea. So here's what I see and what I have as my current understanding on this. Let me just pull this up. Oh, you know what? I want to pull up this. This is Google Earth. Here we are. If we look at the opening to the sea, this is a, what do they call that? I had it this morning. I lost it now. It's water that's draining out to the sea.
Is it a delta?
It's going to create this delta, but they have a particular term for this passage that is draining the water through, and I'm spacing on it right now. But thank you. Yeah, this is a delta, and it's created by this one here, and probably this one here coming down. But this is the Picarot. I think this section right here, where I would believe that the fire and smoke, the pillar, jumped from in front of Israel. Once they got Israel down, it jumped over them and went to this section to keep Pharaoh and his crew out. I'm getting ahead of my story at this point. But let me finish reading, because here's the rest of this particular, this is Nueva, which is kind of Pierre Carot. They had a Migdal, and they had the Baal Zephon there, and we're going to find out what those are right now. So let's go back to our story. Whoops, we want to go here. At this place, the Egyptians had a Migdal, or tower. So a Migdal, between Migdal and the sea, opposite Ben Saphon. So Migdal is some kind of a tower. And then it says, and one of their dunghill gods. Dunghill, I looked it up this morning, has to do with, in fact, it might even still even be there. And that's another word, bugbear. Dunghill gods, called Ben Saphon, had a temple here, as if to watch that no runaway servant or slave might escape from Egypt. So it's kind of like a temple that phantoms make people afraid. I'll finish the sentence. Might escape from Egypt. At least it was intended to act as a bugbear, an alarm or something to frighten them with idols. Wasn't real, apparently, to deliver from bugbear, to deliver the fugitive. What a contempt did Jehovah throw upon the idols of Egypt. Here, this temple is designed to keep people from fleeing Egypt, and everybody's going to leave from this particular point in their story right here, in making this memorial spot to deliver Israel. Yeah, pretty interesting. So talking about those things, apparently there was a tower on one corner of this. This is how I imagine it. A tower maybe on one corner and the temple on this corner, and they came past the mouth to be here in the sea. All right, let me continue. There was a pillar that was found. Actually, there was one found on both sides of this. Here's the pillar. There's the pillar. It was found on both sides of the Red Sea crossing, and it appeared from the writings that were on the pillar that Solomon had actually put it up. They were still standing on one side, and they had to dig it up on the other side. But I think they've got them standing on both sides at this point. If you're interested in the crossing, in the Mount Sinai discovery, it's some very interesting videos on my page here. If you go to Torah 101, drop down to Way of Life, and then you can see here's biblical archaeology. Let me shrink it a little bit. There it is, biblical archaeology. And it's got several videos that are very interesting. It's got the Rock at Horeb. So all these are real places. Some of the Red Sea crossing and some of the chariot wheels that they found in the Red Sea. They said it was Pharaoh's chariot wheel. I don't know. Yasher seems to say that Pharaoh didn't die. Everybody else did, almost 100,000 men. And then I had one on Mount Sinai in particular, and here's one on where is this? Well, this is between the Red Sea and Mount Sinai. I forget which town it is. And then here's the real Mount Sinai found. Very interesting video. This is probably my favorite. Anyway, it's there for your perusal if you want to take a look at it. I think it's really quite interesting. Verse 3, for Pharaoh will say of Israel's seed, they are bewildered in the land, and the wilderness has closed them in. Yes, you know what? This is all about Yahovah. He's going to, well, he says it in the next verse, then I will harden Pharaoh's heart, so that he will pursue them, and I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his army, that the Egyptians may know that I am Yahovah. Remember, Ani Yahovah. I am Yahovah. We've seen it many times. Ani Yahovah. 213 times in Torah. Yahovah wants to be known. He's making himself known. I think he's going to make himself known in the future as well. So he says he's bewildered. The word that I looked at this seems to be entangled. They're entangled in the wilderness, and Yahovah made it look like to Pharaoh that Israel's got no way to go. They're locked in. And he can just have his way with them because they're going to either starve or they're going to have to come back to Egypt through them. Well, entangled. If you look at, again, the Google Earth, I want you to see how they are entangled. Once you come down this
Wadi.
Thank you. You got it for me. I appreciate that, Wayne. The Wadi. Yeah, this is the Wadi. They're coming down this Wadi. And if you look closely, you aren't going to get wagons. You're not going to get elderly. You're not going to get babies anywhere up this. But in the same way, Pharaoh's not going to go up it either. He gets down here to the bottom, and he's locked in if there's a pillar of fire and smoke. He ain't going anywhere. So when he says he's entangled, they are entangled. They got one way to go, and that's towards the sea, which is the way the water goes. All right. Then I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will pursue them. And I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his army, that the Egyptians may know that I am Yahovah. And they did so. I read that, and they did so. What did they do? They went from what was the name of the town that they came from when he told them to go speak to Israel's seed and tell them to turn and camp before Pi-ha-kerot. Ethan. They came from Ethan. So they did. They went to Pi-ha-kerot. Now it was told to the king that the people had fled. And the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people. And they said, why have we done this? That we have let Israel go from serving us. Isn't this what they did every time? They'd say that they could do something. All right, we'll let you go. And then there'd be another plague and make the plague stop. This is what they do every time. They harden their heart over and over and over and over. So he made ready his chariots. I had the chariot wheel. Did I show you the chariot wheel this morning? I don't know that I did. Here's the chariot wheel. Maybe I showed you that already. And took his people with him. Also, he took 600 choice chariots. And I wanted to say something about this. No, I guess not. Also, he took 600 choice chariots and all the chariots of Egypt with captains over them, captains over every one of them. And Jehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued Israel's seed, and Israel's seed went out in boldness. So the Egyptians pursued them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, camping by the sea beside Pi-hakerot before Baal-Zephon. Again, that's the opening, apparently, to the sea, the mouth that's going to the sea. And when Pharaoh drew near, Israel's seed lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So they were very afraid, and Israel's seed cried to Jehovah. Then they said to Moses, because there was no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? You've seen so many miracles that Jehovah is doing. I mean, we just finished with days of darkness. Then we had Passover where the firstborn died. Then we had a pillar of fire and smoke lead us to this place. And yet, listen to the hearts of these people. Then they said to Moses, because there was no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you dealt with us? Why have you so dealt with us to bring us out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. Here we have, this is the problem. These people, they circumcised themselves, they ate the Passover, but they never circumcised their hearts. But this is the problem of having a circumcised flesh before we have a circumcised heart. They left Egypt in the flesh, but their hearts still dwelt there. This is kind of a wake-up call that we're going through right now with what's going on in the world. We've got to, dare I say, awaken to what's going on so that we can escape what's going on in the world. Now it says, and Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of Jehovah, which he accomplished for you today. Which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see again no more forever. Jehovah will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. I guess I don't know where it is. Maybe it's down here. Yeah, it's down here. And Jehovah said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell Israel's seed to go forward. To go forward. Tell Israel's seed to go forward. But lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And Israel's seed shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. This is a really interesting formation in this. I'm going to go back to the Google Earth. There actually is, let me back up out of here a little bit. This is a 10-mile crossing from one side to the other. But because of this delta, it has built up through many, many years that, well, this is very deep here, and it's very deep here. There's like a land bridge that goes from one side to the other. And this is where Israel's seed crossed. Only Yahovah. You know, you look at a map. Where would you take care of the Egyptians? You know, only Yahovah is going to come up with Nueva. I'm going to do it at Nueva. We're going to drown them all in that 10-mile crossing. You know, many people, I mean, this is the Sinai Peninsula, called the Sinai Peninsula because for many years they thought Sinai was kind of where my hand is right now. Maybe it's not a hand. Maybe it's a pointer for you guys. I forget. But that's where it is right now. Sinai is actually over here, Jabal el-Oz, in Midian. Let's continue. But lift off your rod, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. And Israel's seed shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And indeed, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. So I will gain honor over Pharaoh, over all his army, his chariots, and his horsemen. Then the Egyptians shall know that I am Yahovah, Ani Yahovah, when I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. You know, as we're coming to these days that we're coming into right now, and, you know, I think there's still going to be days beyond this. That we're going to see Yahovah act on behalf of his people. But I wanted to just point out some verses that I think are appropriate for what we're seeing right here. Gaining honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, his horsemen, his A.K.A, his tanks, all his weapons of war. Here it says in 31 of Isaiah, woe to those who go down to Egypt for help and rely on horses, who trust in chariots because they are many, and the horsemen because they are very strong, but who do not look to the Holy One of Israel, nor seek Yahovah. Here it says, some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we will remember the name of Yahovah, our Elohim. Who are most people afraid of? You know, there's lots of people who will say, "Oh, I'm afraid of Yahovah." But those who have the chariots and the horses, or Yahovah, some will say, most will say Yahovah, but will not join him fully because they are more afraid of what men will do to them. Isn't that what's going on? What keeps people from leaving the kingdom of their birth is the unknown. We don't know what to expect. We're comfortable with what we have or what we think we have. They were slaves, but they were willing to stay slaves, according to the last verses that we read, than to be free and follow Yehovah. The fear of man brings a snare, but whoever trusts in Yehovah shall be safe. Many seek a ruler's favor, but justice for a man comes from Yehovah. An unjust man is an abomination to the righteous, and he who is upright in the way is an abomination to the wicked. Yes, you're not going to be happy in either place. They're not going to be happy with us, and we're not going to be happy with them. Listen to me, you who know righteousness. You know, I hear a lot about people who think somehow believing in Jesus is going to make them righteous. You don't know what righteousness is. Righteousness is doing Yehovah's statutes and judgments and ordinances. Loving Yehovah with your heart, with your soul, your heart, your lavav, your soul, your nefesh, and with all your me'od. Me'od are the things that we do that are in accordance with Yehovah's eternal and unchanging ways. You don't have righteousness unless you're doing what Yehovah requires of you, or not doing what he doesn't require of you. I maybe said that incorrectly, but it's a reverse. There's many things that we do that we shouldn't do, and there's many things that we should do that or don't do, that we do that we shouldn't do, and many things that we don't do that we should. It goes both ways. So he says, listen to me, you who know righteousness, you people whose heart is my law, my Torah. Do not fear the reproach of men, nor be afraid of their insults. For the moth will eat them like a garment, and the worm will eat them like wool. But my righteousness will be forever, and my salvation from generation to generation. Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of Yehovah. Look at that. We are the arm of Yehovah. We, his sons, his Ezra men, those who took part in Passover. That's who he's talking about. We're the arm of Yehovah. Awake as in the Ancient of Days, in the generations of old. Isaiah 51. Here it is again. Even I, am he who comforts you. Who are you that you should be afraid of a man who will die, and Adam's seed who will be made like grass? Men, all men are going to die. But remember, Yehovah is going to raise up his Ezra men in the last days. And we're going to dwell in Israel. "19. It says, and the Elohim's angel. Ha Elohim. This is one of the few places, one of the 30 some odd places where it says Ha Elohim. The Elohim's angel. They make it the angel of Elohim. No, it's the Elohim's angel who went before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them. So this is why I say I think it jumped over them to go into that entrance, to the entrance, the mouth. Pi ha kerot. Went from before them and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. Thus, it was a cloud and darkness to one, and it gave light by night to the other, so that the one did not come near the other all night long. Did they start crossing at night? I don't think they did. I think they probably crossed in the morning. But I think that Yehovah's pillar He calls it the angel. Isn't that interesting that they would say his angel, his messenger, his melech in the cloud? Is that Yehovah in the cloud? Calls it his melech, his angel. Did it stay there until we were fully across and then essentially release the Egyptians to chase after us? I wonder. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yehovah caused the sea to go back with a strong wind all that night and made the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. So we are crossing in the morning. So Israel's seed went into the midst of the sea on dry ground, and the waters were a wall to them on the right and on the left. I think of this as kind of an analogy. We men are to stay on the narrow path, not turn to the left or to the right. Follow only Yehovah's ways. The waters are on both sides. And I think of the waters as being the peoples of the world, the powers of the world, the ways of the world. How did I write it? Turn to the right or left. Either way turns us to the waters of the world. In a sense, we are passing through the sea of this world right now. Of course, most men are still fully in the sea. Got to leave the sea. Got to get into the dry ground. Get into the narrow way, the old paths, as Yehovah says in Isaiah. And the Egyptians pursued and went after them into the midst of the sea, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. Now it came to pass in the morning watch that Yehovah looked down upon the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud. So this says Yehovah looked down through the pillar of fire and cloud. Is he in the cloud? I wonder. And he troubled the army of the Egyptians. Here's Joel talking about the pillar. I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth, blood and fire and pillars of smoke. This second chapter, especially of Joel, seems to be talking about Israel's seed that has risen again and is going to lead them into the wilderness. And people are going to come to them. When my master has washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion and purged the blood of Jerusalem. Remember, Zion, Jerusalem, these are all Jehovah's people. Some have turned away. They've done things that they're not supposed to do. Purge the blood of Jerusalem from her midst by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. Then Yehovah will create above every dwelling place of Mount Zion and above her assemblies, multiple assemblies, a cloud of smoke by day and a shining of flaming fire by night. For over all the glory there will be a covering, and there will be a tabernacle for shade in the daytime from the heat, and a place of refuge and for shelter from the storm and rain. We're going to see this happen again. Ecclesiastes, what has been will be done. What has been said will be said again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. We're going to see some of these things again. We've got to learn them. And he took off their chariot wheels. So here they are going through the sea, and Yehovah is taking off their chariot wheels so that they drove them with difficulty. And the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the face of Israel, for Yehovah fights for them against the Egyptians." How many of these Egyptians, they had the chance to go with Israel when we left. How many of these Egyptians said, "No, I don't want to go. I don't want to go after these guys." But they have to. We're going to see in Yasher, it was all the men, except for young men and women. All the men of Egypt came after us. Egypt is going to be decimated. They've lost their food. They've lost their cattle, their crops, their fruit trees. They lost their firstborn, and now they're going to lose all the men of Israel. All the fathers are going to be gone. Women and children is all that's going to be left in Egypt. I put how many of these men knew that going after Israel was a bad idea? This is the problem with being in the armed forces. In these last days, they will find themselves fighting against the Elohim of Elohim, the God of gods, the lawmaker and judge of the lawmakers and judges. I always told my boys, don't join the army. Don't do that. You're going to be a pawn. Maybe that's changing in this day and age, but that's how it's been for multiple generations. Let us flee from the face of Israel, for Yehovah fights for them against the Egyptians. Well, they've seen enough of that, Yehovah dealing with them. Then Yehovah said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come back upon the Egyptians, on their chariots, on their horsemen. I can see the Egyptians crossing over. The chariots are leading the way. But now, as they're getting ready to come out of the water, the chariot wheels start to fall off. Now they've got this carnage of broken chariots and horses that are blocking the way from them going fully across the Gulf, the Gulf of Aqaba. They call it the Red Sea. It's the Gulf of Aqaba. They're trapped. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and when the morning appeared, the sea returned to its full depth. Well, the Egyptians were fleeing. It says fleeing into it. So Yehovah overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. I liked this is Young's Literal Translation. It's really not a translation. It's kind of a translation, but listen to what it says. And Moses stretched out his hand towards the sea, and the sea turned back at the turning of the morning to its perennial flow. Then the Egyptians were fleeing at its coming, fleeing into it, fleeing at its coming. And Yehovah shaketh off the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. Yehovah overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. Then the waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and all the army of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. Not so much as one of them remained. Makes it sound like even Pharaoh was probably killed. I don't think he was. Yasher doesn't seem to agree with that. Let me, you know what? We're going to go through this here in just a second. I put so often in the scriptures, the water represents the strength of the world. Here is a great twist. This time, the waters are destroying all of Pharaoh's might. Yeah, that's an interesting twist. But Israel's seed, verse 29, Israel's seed had walked on dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them on their right and on their left. So Yehovah saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Thus Israel saw the great work which Yehovah had done in Egypt. So the people feared Yehovah and believed Yehovah and his servant Moses. I read this word believed. What does that mean? What does that mean, believed? Believe Yehovah. Can you believe Yehovah and not obey Yehovah? I believe. Words, they mean nothing. Actions. Me'od, we were talking about me'od. Those are the actions that are in agreement with Yehovah's statutes and judgments and ordinances. Thus Israel saw the great work which Yehovah had done in Egypt. So the people feared and believed. This is the word that they're using for believed. Aman. I wonder if that's where amen comes from. And Yehovah and his servant believed Yehovah and his servant Moses. I pulled this from Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible. Here's Young's literal translation of this verse again. And Israel seeth the great hand which Yehovah hath wrought against the Egyptians. And the people feared Yehovah and remained steadfast in Yehovah and in Moses and his servants. Hear the difference? Rather than saying believe, they remained steadfast in Yehovah and in his servant Moses. This is Ancient Hebrew Lexicon of the Bible talking about this word aman. Here it says firm is the action, concrete. It means pillar, something that grabs hold or supports something else. The passing of strength or skill to the next generation. A large group of the same kind are stronger than one. Aman, this is word study. A verb meaning to be firm, to build up, to support, to nurture, to establish. The primary meaning is that of providing stability and confidence, like a baby would find in the arms of a parent. It is used to signify support of a pillar. I think there's more to this verse than getting translated as believe Yehovah. Are they starting to turn? Are they realizing that Yehovah works for them? Works for them. Is working for them? Maybe it's a better way to say it. Well, let's go to Yasher. There's just a few verses that I want to cover here, and then we're going to call it good for today. I'm kind of dealing with an abscess right now, so I kind of want to move on here. We're going to start here. This is, remember that we said there are 700,000 men that went ahead and we chased them away. They reported to Pharaoh. And the nobles, same nobles of Pharaoh, went to Egypt and told Pharaoh, saying, Israel, see, have fled, and will no more return to Egypt. And in this manner did Moses and Aaron speak to us. And Pharaoh heard this thing, and his heart and the heart of his subjects were turned against Israel. And they repented that they had sent Israel. And all the Egyptians advised Pharaoh to pursue Israel's seed, to make them come back to their burden. And they said, each man to his brother, what is this which we have done, that we have sent Israel from our servitude? And Yehovah strengthened the heart of the Egyptians. Look at that. He's strengthening the heart. Isn't that nice of him? Strengthened the heart of the Egyptians to pursue the Israelites. For Yehovah desired to overthrow the Egyptians in the Red Sea. Yehovah's got a much bigger plan than we think. And Pharaoh rose up and harnessed his chariots, and he ordered all the Egyptians to assemble. Look at what he says. Not one man was left, except the little ones and the women. So if you were a child, you got to stay with your mom and your sisters. Probably anybody who was a teenager or beyond, they went to fight. And all the Egyptians went forth with Pharaoh to pursue Israel's seed. And the camp of Egypt was exceedingly large and heavy camp, about 100,000 men. 100,000 men. Did they not even have a word for the amount of men they had? It's 1 million men. 100,000 men is 1 million men. And the whole of this camp went and pursued Israel's seed to bring them back to Egypt. And they reached them encamping at the Red Sea. Yeah, right at the Red Sea. And Israel's seed lifted up their eyes and beheld all the Egyptians pursuing them. And Israel's seeds were greatly terrified at them. And Israel's seed cried to Jehovah. And on account of the Egyptians, the Israel's seed divided themselves into 4 divisions. And they were divided in their opinions, for they were afraid of the Egyptians. And Moses spoke to them, to each of them. So here's the divisions that they were divided into. The first division was Reuben, Simeon, and Issachar's seed. They resolved to cast themselves into the sea. We're going to kill ourselves, for they were exceedingly afraid of the Egyptians. Moses told them, fear not. Stand still and see the salvation of Jehovah, which he shall effect this day for you. Remember what he's saying here. We're going to see where it was in Torah. And the second division was Zebulun, Benjamin, and Naphtali's seed. They resolved to go back to Egypt with the Egyptians. We're going to go back. We're going to be servants. Losers. And Moses said to them, fear not, for you have seen the Egyptians this day. So shall you see them no more forever. The third division was Judah and Manasseh and Ephraim's seed. They say Joseph, but we got to understand it correctly. They resolved to meet the Egyptians to fight with them. Ooh, isn't that cool? Judah, he's tough. Joseph and Manasseh, remember, Joseph was leading us for that first 100 years. And we fought many times against Esau's seed and other enemies who came against us. And they resolved to go and meet the Egyptians to fight with them. And Moses said, stand in your places, for Jehovah will fight for you, and you shall remain silent. And the fourth division, Levi, Gad, and Asher seed. They resolved to go into the midst of the Egyptians to confound them. And Moses said, remain in your stations and fear not. Only call unto Jehovah that he may save you from their hands. Well, all these things, look at in the passage that we covered today. They're all there, right here. And Moses said, do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of Jehovah, which he has accomplished for you this day, for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall see again no more forever. Jehovah will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. It's kind of like the answers to all 4 groups are in these 2 verses. After this, Moses rose up from the midst of the people, and he prayed to Jehovah, and Jehovah, Elohim of the whole earth. What's he saying about Elohim, the Elohim, and the Elohim of the earth? I forget. I have to go back and look at it. And Jehovah, Elohim, the Elohim of the whole earth, save now thy people, whom thou didst bring forth from Egypt, and let the Egyptians boast, and let not the Egyptians boast that their power and might are theirs, that power and might are theirs. No, it's not. It's Jehovah's. So Jehovah said to Moses, why dost thou cry unto me? Speak to Israel's seed that they may proceed, and do not stretch, and do thou stretch out thy rod upon the sea and divide it, and Israel's seed shall pass through it. And Moses did so, and he lifted up his rod upon the sea and divided it. Now look what it says. And the waters of the sea were divided into 12 parts. Whatever that means, I have no idea. They didn't say anything about that. The waters were divided, so Israel's seed went into the midst of the sea in the dry land. And Israel's seed passed through on foot with shoes as a man would pass through a prepared road. It was an easy crossing. And Jehovah manifested to Israel's seed, his wonders in Egypt, and the sea by the hand of Moses and Aaron. And when Israel's seed had entered the sea, the Egyptians came after them, and the waters of the sea resumed upon them, and they all sank in the waters. Not one man was left, excepting Pharaoh, who gave thanks to Jehovah and believed in him. There it is, believed in him again. Thus Israel saw the great work which Jehovah had done, so the people feared and believed. Therefore Jehovah did not cause him to perish at that time with the Egyptians. And Jehovah ordered an angel to take him from amongst the Egyptians, who cast him upon the land of Nineveh. And he reigned over it for a long time. So this, what was his name? The little short fat guy with the beard down to his feet. What is it?
Anakim.
Yeah, Anakim. Thank you. Oh, I love it when you guys jump in. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, Anakim. It sounds like he's getting transported. Sounds like Pharaoh got transported like Moses did when he was 18. He was there 1 second. Next, he's moved over to Nineveh. And on that day, Jehovah saved Israel from the lands of Egypt. And all Israel's seed saw that the Egyptians had perished, and they held a great hand. They beheld the great hand of Jehovah, the great hand. Sometimes they call it the arm of Jehovah, especially at this Red Sea crossing. Here they're calling it the hand of Jehovah in what he had performed in Egypt and the sea. And they sang to Moses, Moses and Israel's seed, this song unto Jehovah on the day when Jehovah caused the Egyptians to fall before them. And all Israel sang in concert, saying, I will sing unto Jehovah, for he has greatly exalted. The horse and rider has been cast into the sea. Behold, is it not written in the law of Elohim? I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider thrown into the sea. I had a friend that had written a song about that. Well, we're going to stop here. Next time we're going to read chapters 15 and 16. Our journey on the way to Horeb. All right. Well, hey, thank you for joining me today, you guys. We'll see you next time.